Hey everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. In the past few days, a lot of people have been talking about something that happened at the Munich Security Conference. This year, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave a speech that many Europeans found surprisingly comforting. At one point, he even said something that immediately grabbed attention: America is Europe's child. Now compare that with what happened last year on the same stage, at the same conference. Back then, the speaker was Vice President J.D. Vance, and his tone toward Europe was, let's be honest, pretty brutal. He openly criticized European elites, questioned their strategic seriousness, and challenged the long-standing assumption that the United States should always be there to pick up the bill for European security. So naturally, a lot of commentators jumped to the same conclusion. They said, look, this proves it. The Trump government is divided. One side is hardline and confrontational, the other side is trying to walk it back. This is internal chaos. I disagree. Not only do I disagree, I think this interpretation completely misses what's actually going on. What you're seeing is not a split. What you're seeing is a strategy, and once you look at it that way, the contrast between Vance and Rubio doesn't look like confusion at all. It looks intentional, because the Trump camp has never operated as a single monotone voice. It operates as a layered system, with different people playing different roles aimed at maximizing leverage, not consistency. Let me explain. When people say, the Trump government, they often imagine a unified message machine, like traditional administrations tried to be. But that assumption is already wrong. Trump world doesn't prioritize message discipline in the classic sense. It prioritizes outcomes, and outcomes, especially in international politics, are often achieved through tension, uncertainty, and recalibration, not reassurance alone. That's where the contrast between Vance and Rubio comes in. Yes, both men are core figures in the Trump camp. Yes, they broadly agree on fundamentals, but no, they are not meant to sound the same. Vance plays the role of what I'd call the pressure voice. When he speaks to Europe in harsh terms, he's not primarily trying to persuade European elites in the room. That's not the audience that matters most. His message is aimed at three targets at once. First, American voters, especially the MAGA base, who feel that the U.S. has spent decades subsidizing European security with very little gratitude in return. Second, the political consensus in Washington that says America must always underwrite Europe, no matter the cost, no matter the behavior. And third, European governments themselves, not to make them feel good, but to force them to confront a reality they've been avoiding. That reality is simple. The old deal is no longer guaranteed. Vance's language is intentionally confrontational because confrontation resets expectations. It breaks complacency. It raises the perceived cost of inaction. In other words, he kicks the table. Rubio, on the other hand, plays a very different role. He is the system voice, the stabilizer, the person who reassures allies that while the rules may change, the game itself hasn't collapsed. When Rubio stands at the Munich Security Conference, and talks about shared history, shared civilization, and cultural bonds, he's not contradicting Vance. He's managing the consequences of Vance. His message isn't "don't worry, everything is going back to normal." It's "don't panic, there's still a deal to be made." That's a crucial difference. When Rubio says America is Europe's child, he's speaking on a symbolic and historical level, not a contractual one. He's lowering the emotional temperature, not reaffirming unconditional commitments. And that distinction matters, because nowhere in that speech did he say, the United States would continue to guarantee European security indefinitely, at any cost with no expectations in return. He didn't deny that Europe needs to spend more on defense. He didn't deny that America will prioritize its own interests. He didn't deny that alliances are becoming more conditional. So what looks like a tonal reversal is actually a functional division of labor. This is what I'd call Trump-style multi-voice diplomacy, instead of one unified message. You get layers. The hard layer creates pressure, the soft layer creates space, and at the top, Trump himself makes the final call. Think of it this way. Vance raises the risk, Rubio lowers the fear, Trump renegotiates the price. That's not chaos, that's sequencing. The goal isn't to make Europe feel comfortable, the goal is to make Europe move. And this strategy works precisely because of Europe's structural position. Let's be honest about Europe's reality for a moment. For decades, much of Europe has allowed its military capabilities to atrophy. Defense spending was cut, stockpiles were reduced, industrial capacity was hollowed out. Europe today still relies heavily on American intelligence systems, American strategic lift, American command and control, and ultimately, the American nuclear umbrella. That dependence didn't disappear just because politicians in Brussels talk about strategic autonomy. And institutions like NATO are still fundamentally US-anchored, so in the short term, Europe doesn't actually have many alternatives. That's why pressure works. When someone like Vance questions the automatic nature of US support, it creates anxiety, not because Europe thinks America will leave tomorrow, but because it introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty forces planning. Then Rubio comes in and says, in effect, there's still a relationship here, but it has to evolve. That combination, threat plus reassurance, is far more effective than reassurance alone. Of course, this approach isn't without risk. If you use it too often, allies start hedging. They diversify. They prepare for worst-case scenarios. And Europe is already doing that, quietly. But here's the key point. Europe is not a single country. It doesn't have a unified strategic brain. Eastern Europe sees the US as essential for survival. Western Europe talks autonomy, but struggles with commitment. Southern Europe prioritizes domestic stability over defense. Different histories, different threat perceptions, different political constraints. That fragmentation makes coordinated de-Americanization extremely difficult. So what Europe is likely to do isn't a clean break, but a slow hedge. More talk of autonomy, some selective capability building, but continued reliance on the US where it really matters. And the Trump camp understands this, which is why the strategy isn't burn the alliance down. It's reprice it. The alliance is no longer a moral obligation. It's a transaction. And transactions start with leverage. That's why, in the end, the most important thing to understand is this. There is a deep consensus inside the Trump camp on the fundamentals. America will not subsidize European security forever. Europe must take on more responsibility. Alliances must justify their cost. The only difference is rhetorical function. Who delivers the shock? Who manages the fallout? Who closes the deal? So when you see Vance sounding harsh and Rubio sounding conciliatory, don't assume division, assume choreography. This isn't internal conflict. It's external signaling. It's not confusion. It's leverage management. Vance kicks the table. Rubio offers the chair. Trump decides the terms. And the real question isn't whether Europe prefers one voice over the other. The real question is whether Europe is structurally capable of escaping both. Thanks for watching.